He kōna ipurangi tēnei nā te reo irirangi o Aotearoa.
G'day and welcome to Country Life. I'm Duncan Smith.
Great to have your company. Ko Sally round tēnei. As you may know, it's Conservation Week here in Aotearoa, Te Wiki Te Aki Aoturoa. And we're marking it with a bundle of greenery for you.
Yes, we talk to an expert who's researching if and how hedgerows in New Zealand are helping beef up biodiversity on farm.
We're back at the Ruamahanga River planting trees with some very enthusiastic school kids.
And we're at a farm in the Huranui district where some more rewilding is going on.
But first to a roundup of the week's news from the primary sector. And we're hearing it'll be another tough season for honey harvesters. The new season has just started, and the ongoing oversupply of honey means many beekeepers are not expecting to make a profit this season. Barry Hantz runs about 5,000 hives across mid-Canterbury, mostly producing the clover variety. He says things seem unlikely to change this year, despite an earlier start to spring.
There's been oversupply for probably the last 5 years. There's a lot of challenges that are going to be coming up against us, and most of it is the price point of honey. We definitely won't be expecting to make a profit. We haven't done in the last 2 years, and I don't see anything changing in the foreseeable future.
News this week that Fonterra's expanding its Edendale site in Southland. It's announced it will invest $150 million into a new UHT cream plant there. It's the country's oldest dairy processing site and has been operating for more than 140 years. It pumps out around 14 million bags of milk powder from there each day. It employs more than 670 people across 10 plants, and this new plant will lead to an extra 70 jobs. Fonterra Chief Executive Miles Hurrell says there's growing demand for UHT cream across Asia.
Of course, we have a very successful UHT cream plant in Waitoa now, and the Waikato that is reaching capacity, and the growth that we're seeing out over the next decade, sort of in that sort of 4% plus growth category. You know, we have needed to look to expand for quite some time.
Sticking with dairy, Miraka has unveiled the country's first green hydrogen dual-fuel milk tanker. The company uses geothermal energy to power its plant near Taupo. Chief Executive Carl Graydon says the new 700-horsepower Volvo milk tanker is the next step towards its goal of using 100% renewable energy in its manufacturing and transport lines by 2030.
And we're very proud, very, very proud of our carbon footprint. We believe that we are the lowest manufacturing footprint in carbons, in the sense of carbon globally. So anything we can do to eke out more reductions really puts everyone to the front, and everyone wants to put their hand up and be a piece of this. So it's great. It's been great for us.
A company specialising in bovine colostrum products says sales are up 15% as more people look to invest in their health. Supplement and nutritional company New Image International has 3 manufacturing sites in New Zealand and exports colostrum products to over 20 countries. Chief Executive Rod Taylor says they're looking to expand further.
What we've seen as one of the effects of COVID is that experience has educated more people than ever before the need to look after their health and their immune system, and hence the demand globally for good nutrition, and especially colostrum-based products, has increased significantly.
And from the land of milk and honey to the sea, and claims of what's known as greenwashing. New research says there's little to back up environmental claims like dolphin-friendly on seafood packaging. The study, published in the Journal of the Royal Society of New Zealand, looked at environmental claims on nearly 370 fish and seafood packaged products sold in New Zealand supermarkets. They were a mix of both New Zealand and imported seafood products. Dr. Catherine Bradbury of Auckland University says just over 40% of the products surveyed had some kind of self-declared environmental claim, such as sustainably fished or responsibly caught.
Most of the environmental claims were vague, and this is an issue. They're really actually meaningless because they're not telling you what exactly they do that may make it, less damaging to a dolphin's environment, or, why exactly it might be dolphin friendly.
That was Dr. Catherine Bradbury of Auckland University. Seafood New Zealand spokesperson Fiona McMillan says the study does not differentiate labelling differences between New Zealand seafood and imported product. She says without this information it's hard for Seafood New Zealand to comment on specifics. However, the group strongly refutes the suggestion the industry here is greenwashing. She says greenwashing suggests actively making claims about nature or the environment that don't stack up, which is not a fair description of New Zealand seafood.
Over to horticulture now, and a mixed take on gene technology by fruit and vegetable growers. The government is working to remove the country's nearly 30-year ban on genetically engineered or modified organisms outside the lab, to open up opportunities like developing more resilient fruit and vegetables. Hawke's Bay grower Scott Lawson says producers are split when it comes to wanting to use gene tech or not. He says with companies like Fonterra and Zespri marketing a GMO-free status in international markets, more must be done to understand consumer preferences.
I'm really concerned that we're heading down this risk-based approach, which says there is a risk involved in taking this technology on. There hasn't been a lot of discussion about the ethical basis of this and what's the consumer drive on this. So I think we want to be really careful about losing our status quo, which has added a lot of value in the past to our exports.
And lastly, there's a new pill which could help cut dairy cows' methane emissions. New Zealand company Ruminant Biotech has developed a small metal capsule or bolus which delivers a potent methane squashing medicine into an animal's gut. It's derived from a particular kind of seaweed, which the company says could be manufactured in an industrial plant in New Zealand, rather than having to harvest vast amounts of seaweed. Spokesperson Tom Breen says having produced good results in the New Zealand trial, the company planned to use the next 6 months to produce its first commercial product.
We've made substantial progress over the last 3 years, from 2021, where we started out with really initial proof of concept work, to where we are today, where we've made incredible progress, and we're seeing the types of performance in our studies where we're able to achieve a 75% daily methane inhibition for 100 days.
And good news, it could be ready to sell to New Zealand farmers next year. And that's the rural news.
This is Country Life on RNZ National 101 FM.
Our guest this week is a bit of an expert on how to get farms humming with all sorts of life. Dr. Sarah Cross is a senior lecturer in terrestrial ecology at Canterbury University. While she grew up in the wilds of New York City, her research has focused on getting out in the field to find out how people and wildlife interact on farm.
I started noticing just how many hedgerows were being planted by farmers here. They are popping up everywhere. And it's really, really exciting because this is, I think, a truly grassroots effort by farmers to increase the biodiversity value of their properties while continuing to do really productive farming in those landscapes.
Now, you call them hedgerows, but you're talking also about riparian planting and those sort of strips of planting that we often see along roadsides?
I use hedgerows as a catch-all phrase for really talking about any plantings or habitat that is retained in the spaces between fields. So that can be riparian corridors or plantings. That can be what are called shelter belts often. We in the ecology world call them field margin habitats or non-crop plantings, linear plantings, all of these smaller scale, often straight lines of habitat that are planted in between the growing areas on farms.
Yes, you wouldn't think just a straight line of planting would do much good, but what sort of potential does it have to increase biodiversity?
If we look at studies from places like California and Europe, hedgerows and these linear plantings can play an enormous role in sustaining large diversity of particularly common species, but also increasingly we're finding less common species and rare species using those habitats either to make their way from one conservation area to another or as stopovers during migrations. And we're only just, I think, scratching the surface of the role that these habitats can play.
We love our birds here in New Zealand, but certain types can be a pest, and farmers and growers have to spend a lot of time protecting their crops. What are the advantages of having them on farm, and how can farmers and orchardists and winemakers live side by side with them?
That's exactly what we study in my lab group. So we try to understand what are called the net effects of birds. Many birds actually provide services to farmers. Often the most common one is eating pest insects, but we also have birds that can act as pollinators for some of our crops, particularly here in New Zealand. So they provide actual economic benefits, and that's often kind of earlier in the year in the spring. And then farmers do often have the challenge, if they're growing something particularly delicious, like fruit or seeds, that there are many birds that like to enjoy those same crops. And so there are tools that they can use to manage for those species. I think when it comes to hedgerows, one thing that we're seeking to understand is whether or not the hedgerow itself is a major driver of bird losses from birds to the crop. And how the type of hedgerow that's planted might play a role there. So we're interested in understanding whether or not the exotic hedgerows that are planted, often the very large shelter belts, are actually maintaining larger populations of the introduced birds that are often the main pests of our crops here in New Zealand. Whereas the native hedgerows are more likely to provide habitat for our native species, many of which are actually insectivores or insect-eating species year-round. So they're more likely to be providing those benefits and not as many of those costs to farmers. And so having habitat for those birds not only at that time of the year for their nesting habitat, but also throughout other times of the year to sustain those populations is one of the key things that farmers can do. There are other tools that may be useful down the track. In North America, we encourage farmers to install nest boxes for insectivorous birds. A lot of cavity nesting species are insectivores in North America. And we do have some cavity nesting species here that could benefit from that. But at the moment, many of the birds that would probably utilize those nest boxes are introduced species that could then in turn provide or cause damage to the crops. So we still have a lot to disentangle, I think, in the New Zealand system to understand how best to manage it, to really reap those biodiversity rewards, hear that birdsong in our farming landscapes, and then for farmers to get the most benefit and the least cost out of those birds.
Now, you've also looked at how birds of prey can be encouraged into vineyards and ranch lands in the US to act as pest control. Is it being taken up by farmers?
Absolutely. So our work with the karaerea, the New Zealand falcon, was very popular, and I was one of the founding members of the Karaerea Falcon Trust in Marlborough, and we had many, many requests from growers for releasing falcons into those vineyards around there. And then in California and throughout North America, growers are very keen on utilizing practices that will increase the abundance and diversity of birds of prey on their properties. Mostly what they're doing is putting up barn owl boxes, which are nesting boxes for the native barn owl species there. And barn owls, at least in California, we found that 99% of their diet are animals that are considered pest species by farmers. So they breed quickly. They're called a cosmopolitan species because they're kind of willing to live near people and near each other, so you can have large abundances of the barn owls. And then they eat whatever is most abundant, and in these farm fields, those are things like gophers and voles, which farmers here should be very happy they don't have to deal with those rodent pest species.
Indeed. But kiwi fruit growers might also be keen to hear about some of the work you're doing into bird damage around bud break time. What have you found so far in that research?
We had a master's student named Jordan Hollinshead who just finished her work, actually, and she was working with Zespri and with growers on the North Island to understand what management factors influenced bird damage to the buds of kiwi fruit. So very, very early in the spring or late winter, birds are often food limited, and they will sometimes turn to the new growth from plants as a kind of last resort food source when there's not other naturally abundant foods in the surrounding areas. So growers knew that birds were causing damage, and they had seen that there was potentially more damage occurring in some orchards over others. And what Jordan found, is that in orchards that hadn't mowed their grass leading up to that bud burst time, there was actually less damage from birds, even though there were more birds present in those orchards, because most likely that grass had seed on it, and that was providing that important late winter food source for the birds that then weren't attacking those buds.
So that's really interesting, isn't it? That could really help with increasing crop size and so on. But just heading off farm for a moment, you've also done research into birds colliding into buildings in New York City. It's not really a problem we have here, or maybe we do, I don't know. But did anything come out of that research?
We've just published that research recently, and we're looking at how weather impacts bird collision rates with buildings in New York City. New York lies along the Atlantic Flyway, so it's a major migratory pathway for birds, and thousands of birds die in New York every migration season because they collide with glass. Our results are helping to inform when buildings should try to turn their lights off, because we know that having lit buildings, especially large glass skyscrapers at night, is a major contributor to the number of birds that will collide with those buildings. And so understanding the wind conditions and the weather conditions that also lead to higher rates of collisions means that we can fine-tune predictions a bit better, so that we can really work with building operators to try to reduce that light pollution on the most dangerous nights for birds.
What a great result that would be.
I should say, we don't know if New Zealand is escaping this, and I actually suspect that we do have pretty high rates of bird collisions here in New Zealand. And especially as we see the resurgence of native birds in our cities, we probably are going to see more and more bird collisions being an issue. We do know that has been a problem in Wellington for kereru that are returning to the city in large numbers. And there is a group who are a charitable organization who have been working with some of the Wellington City Council to try to implement bird-friendly glass on some of the more dangerous buildings there. And I do suspect we need to start thinking about that a lot more here in New Zealand.
I was talking there to Dr. Sarah Cross. She says, of course, the use of birds as a friend and not a foe in farming systems is not a new field. Before the pesticide era, they were a common tool in the quest to grow food. Her research team's starting to map hedgerows on the Canterbury Plains so they can better understand the effects on birds and farming systems. Time now for part 2 of our series on a project happening on the Ruamahanga River in South Wairarapa. Last time, the 9, 10 and 11-year-olds from Martinborough School were in their gumboots on the edge of the river, learning about bugs, fish and water quality. Well, we're back with them again on Waihinga Farm, which borders 6.5 kilometres of the river. It's right near midwinter, isn't it? A few weeks after our first visit to the river, with the same class, and we're just walking down a track on the Smith farm. Where are we heading to, Jane?
We're going to the river again, to the Ruamahanga.
Jane Ridderford is one of the leaders of the project.
We're only a few miles downstream, and as the crows flies, we're probably 1.5 miles from us, but the river really meanders a lot at this point. But we're very keen for the children to get a sense of connecting everything to the river, and that all the work in the wetland and the bush, they're all linked to the river.
And this is a special part of the river as well because of the remnant bush here.
Yeah, well, I think it's special in lots of ways. In these sand dunes, I'm not exactly sure of the location, but this is where the original Waihinga pa would have been. And there was a wetland here. I would say that this, in my view, is probably the most impressive piece of podocarp forest close to Martinborough. But like many of these little clutches of bush, has been grazed for many years, so the understory lost, and now it's been fenced and set aside as a QE2 block, and today we're helping to restore the understory.
Good waiting at the gate, The 4.5 hectare block we're heading to has been entrusted to the QE2 Trust, so no grazing and cropping here. Pete Smith is the farmer. His family has been farming here since the 1860s.
This was originally big kakateas and totras, and the surrounding farmland had scattered trees in it, and it's all pretty good farmland. It's all, we grow maize and peas and other cash crops. So we surrendered this 4 hectares and made it into a QE2, but cleared the trees from the surrounding area so that we could crop it a bit more intensively. So that's how it came into being.
Trevor Thompson is from the Trust, and he kicks off by explaining his role.
Well, what do I do? Well, I work with people like Pete, mostly farmers right throughout the Wairarapa, who have still got some native forest on their land, or a wetland or a coastal area that's something special. And this is one of those very special places. And until maybe 10 years ago, this was grazed, but all these big trees here were all still there, but nothing else underneath them. So you guys today are going to help us do something really important, and that is getting in the understory. That's the smaller plants that are underneath, and that will make sure that these big guys will have little babies that can grow and take their place when these guys die of old age. And so what you're doing is something that is really, really, really important. And thank you so much for coming down today and giving us a hand, because that's look how many of you guys there are. Look how many there are of me and Pete. Not many. So your help will be very much appreciated. So what I want you to do is grab a weapon. and let's go into where we're going to plant. And I'll plant a plant for you. You can see how it's done, and then we're just going to get stuck in and get on with it, eh? Righto, follow me.
Let's go kill some zombies.
Grab one and let's go.
There's a big one there right behind you. These ones here are called, anybody?
Big tree.
Titoki. All right. These guys here, these are one of the hoheris or lace sparks, and this is hoheri.
After identifying the trees, it's time to give a lesson in tree planting.
And to make sure the hole is deep enough, that's not quite deep enough, eh? We want it to be a little bit deeper than that. Okay, got it? In the hole, you can hold it upright, bring the dirt in around it. And lastly, we're going to just press it down nice and firm, and that will make sure the plant doesn't fall over, right? Job done. Okay?
Yep.
Now the next plant is going to go, say, 2.5, 3 steps away. So we go 1, 2, 3. Oh, look, there's a nice little cleared area there. So that's the next My name's Trevor Thompson. What I want you to do, I'm the QE2 rep for the Wairarapa, and this little forested area here is a QE2 covenant. So that's how come we've got these lovely kids to come and give us a hand to enhance it.
How long has it been covenanted?
Probably about 10 years now. So some of these trees that aren't giants but are already big trees, they were planted quite early on and are already starting to fill in the niches that were wide open and needing to be filled.
And more is going in today.
Yep, probably another 100 or so. Many thousands more needed, but yes.
So how often do you get schools in to help out and volunteers?
This year and last year we've had quite a lot of schools, probably about 8,000 or 9,000 trees in the ground here in this QE2 covenant. So it's a trend that seems to be gathering pace, so we're all for that.
This ground's so tough. It almost bent the shovel. Wait, watch out. Can you hold this? Yeah.
I think it's great to have the kids out here in amongst these wonderful big podocarp trees.
Just watch it for you. Yeah, I know. Wait, stop.
They're not just a labour unit. We hope, and I'm sure they will become engaged and enjoy their time here. Most importantly, because if they enjoy being in the forest when they grow up to be big people, then they start looking after it. And if they didn't enjoy their time when they're kids, they won't look after it. So it's important they enjoy their time.
Oh no, there's a root there, like a big one.
Yeah. I should have said, if you come across a big tree root, just go to one side. We don't want to cut into that, right?
What do we do with that?
So just go to one side.
Some spots are, of the ground's really hard, but It's really fun too. It's really satisfying once you get a soft spot.
Yeah, it's really fun.
I think it's lovely planting new trees and making nature.
And I think it's really fun because we get to experience nature.
And how do you know which plant to put in which place? Are you getting some instruction or are you just going for it?
Just going for it.
Yeah.
Do you know the names of these plants?
We know the colour one. We know some of the plants.
Right, next spot over here for those who haven't got a place to plant. Nice work, guys. Good hard stomp. Oh, and somebody's done a few other new ones as well. That's great.
As we go, Archie. Wait, is this a good spot?
Yes, it is. That's a great spot. Have you got a plant? You're gonna go and get another plant?
I'll go get one this week.
You're gonna dig this time, are you? This remnant podocarp forest is probably the best example we have of what used to be here on all these plains that we're surrounded by now, that are now in cattle or sheep or vineyards. There was big forest here, and this is one of those final remnants that gives us an indication of what once was. So it's very important that we grab it with both hands, protect it, get it to become reasonably intact so it's got its full complement of species, and then we have a great example and a place for lots of things to live. Geckos, skinks, birds. The genetic diversity of this area is pretty unique. This is a very dry area normally, but being close to the Ruamahanga here, we've got a lot of artesian water, and so that suited these big podocarps, and it's great to have that representative sample in place.
It's amazing that some of these trees, the bigger ones, did survive with all the grazing that took place underneath.
Yeah, it is.
What species are they?
Well, we've got big matai, that one over there. We've got big totara, this guy here. We've got big kahikatea, that's that one over there.
What's this one?
We've got big pukatea. These guys aren't huge, but further through there's some big pukatea, telling us that this was actually a very wet area in the old days. It's not so wet now, but those big trees are still here. Big kowhai are in here as well, kowhai microphylla, and some big Plagianthus regius, ribbonwood. That's probably the complement of big mature trees here. But we've reintroduced a lot of the trees that we would have reasonably expected to be here, and the understory plants, which is really important. We've got to try and fill in these light wells, make this a closed canopy, and this area won't need our help.
When will that happen?
When will that happen? Or maybe a couple of 100 years in the future. Yeah, long-term job, yeah. Okay, how are we going?
Around it.
Got that one? Right.
Lucy, how's it going? What are you planting here?
Kaukau.
Is it hard work?
I need Elle to kind of mush this out, but I think I got it. Yeah, it's quite hard sometimes.
That's all right, that's good. That's good.
Are you enjoying the day?
Yeah, I really liked the first trip we did when we did all the bugs. That was definitely my favourite.
And what about this? This is quite different, isn't it?
Yeah.
Can you see a little bit of a connection to what you're doing?
From all the eco stuff, type of things. Dad, could you mush this up?
I'm Courtney Miles and I'm the Year 5-6 teacher at Martinborough School. I think connection to community and connection to place is really important. So the children, giving a little bit of themselves to this place as they're planting and looking after the health. It's really nice seeing children working together as well and connecting with other members of the community. But we also take this back and turn it into literacy and numeracy projects that we do at school as well.
Do you do that straight away or do you wait a bit? How does it work?
I do it in the following weeks. So today we will go back and we'll write a recount about what we've done while it's fresh in our minds, and then we'll use that and I'll turn it into different maths and literacy tasks for the following week, as well as Jane and Rod come in and do literacy activities with the kids as well.
Is that too deep? That's good. That's about right. Okay, that's about right.
For me, I just think the connection to community is the most important thing for the kids. So they're connecting with the place, they're connecting with each other, and they're connecting with other members of our community, which is so cool, and making those relationships that can help them in the future too.
And what is some of the feedback the children are giving you when they finish?
Oh, they just have huge smiles on their faces. They tell me that was so fun, we loved that, when are we going again? But also the learning, like when they came in here and we've been making some kawa balm at school, and straight away they went, oh, that's kawa, you know, and then they're looking for it out in the community, what can they use it for their whānau. But yeah, this is cool, they take it into their homes and try and make their homes better places too from what they learn here.
Okay, let's go. One down. Where's your one? Is that yours? Yep, my car. What's your?
Down here.
No, we need some dirt around there.
Some of the children at Martinborough School. And I was speaking also to teacher Courtney Miles, QE2's Trevor Thompson, Farmer Pete Smith and Jane Ridderford. And the music in that piece was composed and played by Rod Sugden. You can hear part 1 of the series by going to our podcast notes and by checking out the story on the country section of RNZ's website.
I'm John Whittaker, the flower man from Fielding, and you're listening to Country Life at RNZ National.
Now we're heading to Punawai, a sheep and beef property in North Canterbury, where Chris Balderston is in the process of rewilding parts of his farm. Chris enlisted Jamie McFadden and the team from Huranui Natives in Cheviot to do several native restoration plantings on steep hill country. A couple of the blocks have already gone into QE2 covenants, and it's the largest scale reintroduction of totara, matai and kahikatea Jamie's ever done. Chris and Jamie are with Cosmo Kentish Barnes in the farmyard at Punawai.
We've got 540 odd hectares, and it's the first lump of land in my 53 years of farming on my own account that I now own outright. And I've never had so much fun with my pants on as I have since I've owned Punawai in the last 4 years. And my base objective with Punawai, because I'm in my 8th decade and I've got less days in front of me than I've had behind me, is for this to be one of the best farms in the district. So more sustainable, more profitable, more future-proof, and making it better for man and beast.
And Chris, Jamie and his planting team have been regular visitors here at Punawai.
I think I'm probably Jamie's most favourite, most profitable, biggest turnover customer, and I'm super happy about that. And he's laughing away, so I don't think he's sad about it. But between poles and mostly natives, and now my objective to have a totara forest, similar to what you would see going over the Whitcomb, which I've done 2 or 3 times. The totara forests on the west coast are just astonishing, really. And the fact they're still there is because when they were logging it furiously to set up the rehab farms for fencing and battens and all the rest of it, the loggers couldn't get that far up. So they're a magnificent tree, light, strong, durable, aromatic timber, not unlike Oregons or macrocarpus, to be honest, but a true native.
How long have you been planting totaras here for?
Oh, I think probably going back 2 planting seasons, and we're still putting them in the ground.
That's exciting.
Oh, yeah.
Long-term project?
Yeah, it's a true partnership in my opinion. Jamie's local, he's got an awesome team, and while I don't actually do the planting, I pay the bills and organise the fencing.
Yes, and so did you get any funding for this from Environment Canterbury?
Yep, I got some money out of ECAN for exclusion fencing.
Because fencing is expensive, isn't it?
Oh, eye-watering, yeah. So basically I've done a lot of preserving and protecting, and all of my native areas are named for people that are involved, and that helps with identification. Talking to Jamie about something that needs doing, I just say, oh well, in Hannah's, because Hannah's got her own wee block just up the track here.
And Hannah works for Jamie?
Yep.
Quite a few of our crew, well we've got 7 or 8 blocks named after members of our crew, and Linda and myself, yeah.
And Sophie and Tony and Chappie and
Andrea and Flora.
Wee Sophie down there, I've only ever seen her twice. Got a wee native area down here on a main access way for the farm. And fair go, I thought she was going to give me a hug and a kiss when she saw that. It's got a wee creek running through it, and I'm a fisher person, and I live just over there, and this is just so wonderful. And one's named after Miles. He said, we don't usually do that. And I said, well, a bit of a contrarian, Miles, this is what we're going to do. But he loves the Canterbury grey scrublands and the rocky outcrops in the Lowry Hills range, which is range of hills that Punawai is located on.
Quite nice to honour all those hard-working people.
Yeah, it's a team effort.
Yeah.
I mean, I've got blocks named after the guys that have done the exotic stuff as well. Stu and Lewis are due here next week, and Pedro is a wee expat Chilean.
And Jamie, has it been a challenge putting plants into the ground on this rugged hill country farm?
Yeah, when I say to the staff that we're going to Baldy's farm, the eyes roll because it is steep, and I mean some of the sites we do wear crampons. It is challenging country. When we've done a couple of days on this hill country here, we know we've had a workout. Some of the sites here are some of the more challenging just because of the steepness.
But it sounds like you've made some solid progress.
Yeah, we have spent a fair few weeks here, and we've probably up to several thousand native plants. And in terms of totara, I'm guessing we're somewhere around 600-700 now that we've put in. And we've also planted matai and kahikatea, some of the other native podocarps that were local to this area.
So this is transforming the landscape on the farm.
Yeah, it absolutely is. My objective is, I think I said, make the place better for man and beast. But a subset of that is that I just want to retire the stuff that shouldn't ever have farm animals in it. And I think this last summer, survival rate with the natives and the poplars, I would say, is in the high 90% for this time last year's planting and the subsequent 2 or 3 years. So keeping the bloody things alive, keeping the animals away from them, keeping the weeds away from them because they're just so slow to get going. But the survival in there is just phenomenal, isn't it?
Yeah, well, in a drought year, to get the survival, I think the timing of our watering was bang on. We did 2 waterings through the summer, and it's a bit like the poplars and willows too. I mean, timing's critical. If you hit that timing right, it's well worthwhile. And we've seen that this year. I mean, sites that didn't get any watering through the district, there's been big losses, whereas 90% survival across a lot of the plantings here in a dry year.
Would we be able to go up and see the totara forest that you've planted?
Yeah.
Yeah. We get up to that one?
This is in Jamie's?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I reckon if we just go off where the
heavy bar
style
gate
is, where the dry corner there, we can see the kowai stand as well.
Yep. Righto. All aboard.
I'll jump in the back.
No, you're right.
We'll fit in.
Put the skinny one in the middle.
That must be me.
Now we are heading up the hill and Chris is side by side, and Chris, you've got quite a few poplar poles planted here.
Yeah, well, Jamie's the master of that obviously, and I sort of wave a hand and say, well, what about this area? Yeah. And so Jamie goes around, marks out where they're going to go, and then the team comes in and drags them to the site, plants them, puts a sleeve around them, and then we have to do our bit by keeping cattle away from them for at least 3 years, because they rub on the bloody things and bust the roots off and then they die.
Some of them are at least 4 metres tall.
Yep, 4 or 5 metres, the tallest ones.
Growing well.
Yep. There's actually a group up here. When I planted these 4 here, Baldy, I scratched my head and I thought, will these survive? These 4 here? Because it's probably one of the hardest sites, this little bit just here. But we've got 3 out of the 4 going. And that one may even still be alive, but yeah, that one might be still alive.
Jeez, this is a steep gully here. It must have been a mission getting these poles in.
Well, all right, dragging them to the site, but trying to get them in the ground is a big challenge.
Yep.
But this is the sort of country we're working on, the crew are on in the Blythe Valley, which is straight over the hill there. This is the sort of country they're on today, steep like this.
Hard yakka.
Yeah. Very hard work, especially if you have to carry everything uphill. You can't get uphill of the site and drag it down. If you have to carry it uphill, which they'll be doing today, it's a big job. Yep. And like these three here, particularly these two, I sort of scratched my head if we get them going, but we have.
Have you got mainly poplar poles, or are there willow poles as well here?
Mostly poplars to hold the land, because that's what the supply, the River Protection Nursery have available, is mostly poplars. They're a bit limited on the willows, but they're building up their willow stocks now.
So it doesn't matter too much which one you use?
It's more the species. I mean, there's probably 10 different poplar and willow species that are supplied for farmers for the erosion control, and it's critical to know which species are best suited where. So certain species do better in the dry and the wind than others. Yeah.
And we can see those poles dotted all the way up the erosion-prone gully there.
Yep.
And further down towards the creek are clusters of beautiful native trees.
Yeah, across the other side. So this is 7 hectares in this block, which goes up, right up the top there, above that rocky knob way at the top, and then comes back down here. And so what we're doing is we're not planting anything where the thick native bush is already, like there's a lot of lancewoods and five finger in that gully, but we're planting all of the clear areas. So over there is a dry hillside, and there's no point.
That's Hannah's favourite spot over there.
Yeah, and it's no point putting totara over there or kakatea or matai high up over there, because it's just too dry. So most of that's kānuka forest. So when we do the plantings, we try and match it to as what would have naturally occurred there, as close as possible as we can. So I think up through here there's now around 300 totara, some matai and some kahakatea. So in time, I mean, it's going to look pretty cool in 10 years' time, but in 300, 500 years' time, this is going to be massive totara forest, like has not been here for a long time. We're actually bringing totara forest back into this hill range.
What an amazing legacy you're leaving, Chris.
I think a couple of old adages are quite right, aren't they? That young men cut trees down, old men plant them. So I'm an old man now, and not claiming to be wise, but it's a wise man that plants a tree that he knows he'll never get to sit under. And as I've already said, been farming on my own account, mostly dairy, for 52 years, and cut down my fair share of trees over the years. So now is my time to, leave this place better than we found it. That's the mission.
Well, you're not wasting any time. It's happening.
Yeah, well, I've never been known for my patience, and got way less days in front of me than I've had. So, I need to be cracking on with it and not having a year off planting until such time as I fall off my perch. So that's good. Jamie knows he's got certainty of work here. As I've talked to him, I said, God, you're bloody slow with your bloody accounts, Jamie. I said, have you actually thought about from when you go and gather the seed and get it to strike, and then you plant it out and you put it in pots, and then you wait for a bit more years, days, and then you sell it to me, and then you put it in the ground?
It's a lot of work.
Your time lag is dreadful. Cop yourself on, man, and send your bloody accounts out sooner. So he didn't take any notice of me, but I understand the supply chain in doing that, and I know he gathers seed like tussock seeds from the top of Danzy's Pass, because I've got some of them in and around my house.
You must have a extensive seed collection at the nursery.
Well, I've got a lot of sites that I collect seed from the mountains to the sea. So we collect seed from Lake Station, which is way up Lake Sumner, and we collect seed along the coast and anywhere in between. But I guess we're lucky in that we've got access to so many different farms where we can collect seed, and farmers are more than happy for us to collect seed.
And also talking about seed source, Jamie does a species list, which is about 6 foolscap pages just for this gully, all big long words that I can't even pronounce, let alone remember or say. But with the stuff we're putting in the ground now, they're going to be a wonderful seed source for this whole gully, and probably elsewhere as well.
This is certainly going to attract a lot of native bird species.
I reckon, and I'm not a birdie-wordy person, but I reckon the bird life has improved dramatically since I've been doing this sort of stuff around here.
Surprising the kingfishers up here.
Yeah.
They love these gullies up on Punawai, and we hear them when we're working up here, up in this native bush. I mean, they're usually a stream or river bird, but they love these gullies. There's bush, there's food, yeah.
A mate of mine who I ride push bikes with, Colin Crabb, and he says, "Oh, I hear that bellbird?" And I said, "There's no bellbirds around here." And he says there is, so I don't know, but we've definitely got a lot of tui around the place.
Tui?
Yeah.
No, it'll be bellbird.
Bellbird, is it?
Yeah, he's right. The bellbirds are what's prolific round here.
Are they?
Yeah,
oh, wrong way around.
Yeah. There won't be many tui, but they may come back one day. They're out along the coast. But this is, I mean, you can see the Kānuka down there. It's surprising how quick time goes by and stuff starts to show up. Like the growth rate on these Kānuka and across there, and even like these shrubs here. I was just looking at these before. Man, they're growing.
Oh, unbelievable.
For a dry, hungry, sunny face. I mean, you look at the growth rate on the plants there.
What kind of shrubs are they?
They're a yellow shrub daisy. These ones here, they have yellow flowers in the spring, but they naturally grow on the steeper banks of the Huranui River. So these are all plants that are natural. I mean, there's Kānuka, there's Coprosmus, prostrate kowhai, there's Carokia, there's all sorts, cabbage trees. Yeah.
And Chris, the 7-hectare Kiritu covenant we're looking at is called Jamie's.
Yeah, he's famous.
Jamie's covenant, and it has a new fence around it.
Yeah, this is what we call regen fencing here. It's all steel. No wood in it anywhere. Up there, around there, down through the gully. And Jamie and I refer to a couple of big old kowhais in there as the grandfather and grandmother tree. The two that are really standing out there now, and I reckon they're looking amazingly different and better because the Malumbekkia, I think it is, vine that's smothering the damn things, Jamie and Grant, wasn't it?
Chappie and Tony.
Oh yeah, had a couple of days in there cutting that stuff off, and I reckon it's just gone. Oh, thank goodness.
It can breathe.
Yeah, and it's a dreadful climbing bloody nuisance of a thing that if we're not careful will smother this whole bloody gully.
Which you don't want, as you've planted lots of totara.
Yeah, the totara are all up through there, and straight opposite us there's quite a few totara.
Is that where we can see the guards?
Yeah, those biodegradable guards are a great investment. They do cost a bit, but they protect the plant better from weeds, from wind. It makes it easier to find them, makes it a lot easier to spray around them. But in the wetter bits down the bottom, like right down in the corner there, there's a kahikatea. So any of the wetter spots I've put in kahikatea as well. But mostly totara up through there. A lot of those are totara.
We've had several iterations over the years about how to protect the native plants we're putting in. I think we've pretty well got it right now, is that we use a wall mat underneath and the biodegradable guards and then the two stakes in them, and they seem like they're going to be good for 3 or maybe even 4 years, in which case the natives will be fine by then.
And pest control. So there was lots of goats here, quite a few deer and a few pigs, but in our spare time we've got rid of the goats for now. Yeah, and we've pretty well got the deer sorted. I mean, they could come into here 2 or 3 years' time, all the natives are up getting away, and they can just destroy these natives quite quickly.
After all that hard work.
Yeah, keeping on top of the deer's number 1, goats be number 2.
Oh, what's the plant? To deer, it's just like ice cream.
Broadleaf.
Yeah.
But even things like totara, they love to, the stags love to rake their antlers up and down the totara, young totara.
Which can kill a tree.
Oh yeah, no, they can do a lot of damage.
Well, it's a huge project that you've undertaken here, and it looks like it's pretty much planted out now, most of this gully.
I don't know what Jamie's plans are, but I don't think there's not much room for any infilling anywhere here.
Well, we've had such a good result. We've got good coverage here now, and there's a couple of other big blocks like this over the other side as well. 5 hectares, Tony's and Andrea's. There's quite a lot of totara over there that we've put in. Yeah.
Jamie McFadden from Huranui Natives ending that story. Cosmo was also talking to Chris Balderston at Punawai, his 540-hectare hill country farm in North Canterbury's Huranui district.
Well, that's it for Country Life this week. It's great to have your feedback. Do keep it rolling in. You can contact us at country@rnz.co.nz.
And you can follow and listen to Country Life wherever you get your podcasts.
You can read more and listen again to the stories you've heard by checking out the section called News on the RNZ website, and you'll find us under Country.
The stories in this episode were produced and presented by Cosmo Kentish-Barnes and Janina Schwanneker.
And me, Sally Round. And in the studio production team today, David Knowles and Phil Benge.
From me, Duncan Smith, bye for now.
Ka kite anō.